Most of the time, you probably look at buying a V8 and buying a manual as the same thing. Especially with American performance cars, getting a V8 with a manual is just what you do. It's like as obvious as how we all have barbecue sauce on our s'mores, right? So for everyone who loves a good exhaust, fast accelerations, and fun driving, here are the 9, sorta, you'll see what I mean, fastest manual V8 American cars out there. Let's get into it. If you have any video requests, make sure to toss those down in the comments and let me know which of these cars is best or if I missed any good ones. Real quick, here's my typical disclaimer for the cars and prices I found here. And for whoever's running this TikTok account that's taken like 40 of my videos and keeps taking them, thank you, but you can stop now and I'll be posting them myself from now on. Now, without further ado, the first car for today is technically 4 cars, so that's where the sorta came from. The 4 cars that tied with a 4.1 second time are the base C6 Corvette, 6th Gen Camaro SS, 5th Gen Camaro ZL1, and new Mustang Dark Horse. Seeing the 5th Gen ZL1 match the 6th Gen SS isn't all that crazy to me, but the fact that acceleration-wise a base C6 Corvette from between 08 and 2013 matches Ford's new, all-exciting, beefier Mustang that's 11 to 16 years newer is pretty wild. I get that the Mustang is newer, safer, has more power, and has a better interior. Alright, maybe not a better interior with the stupid iPad's Elmer's glued onto the dash. But yeah, I don't hate how the Dark Horse looks, I just don't like some details, and I think it's crazy that I can compare these 2024s selling for $65,000 to a base model Corvette from 2 generations ago. Whether that's great for the C6 or bad for the Dark Horse, I'm not really sure, but anyway, instead of going through all the specs of each car here, I'll just toss them up on the screen and I guess we'll move right over to the second car, or 5th, I guess. Well, actually 5th and 6th. Bruh. The next 2 cars here that are the second car, but kind of the second and third, or more like 4th and 5th cars, but second entry, so cars plural number 2, are the 5th Gen Camaro Z28 and Cadillac CTS V2 with 4 second 0 to 60s. Even though both of these cars are really awesome and both have their own great reputations, the sad part about both of them is that they're not easy to find as a manual for the Vs, and they're not easy to find at all for the Z28s, which only came in a manual. The Vs have a supercharged LSA V8 with 556 horsepower, and the Z28s have 7-liter LS7 V8s with 505 horsepower. They both cost close to 40 to 50 grand, but the Z28s also seem like they can go as high as 65,000, which does seem mind-boggling to me compared to what prices on these used to be. Even with the high prices though, these cars have some of the best engine orchestras, they look awesome, and are really great for their own reasons. Next up is finally a single car, and it's the Dodge Challenger Hellcats with a time of 3.9 seconds from a car and driver test back in 2014. Surprisingly, the time they got with a wide-body manual in 2018 was a 1/10 of a second slower, and they didn't really address that difference besides it weighing 70 pounds more, but they did focus on the 3 to 4/10 of a second difference between the auto Hellcats and the manual ones. Prices for these seem to be anywhere from $45,000 to $75,000, which is probably mostly due to the big range of years these were built. I was also a little surprised these go for as low as $45K at dealerships, because that was with no accidents, no fleet cars, and most of them had like 40,000 miles or less, but that probably comes from larger supply over the years. Even with how old these are and the fact that Dodge has kinda done everything they can with them, I'll probably always prefer to see a Hellcat or even a Scat Pack over the new electric thing they're replacing them with. And as an old competitor to the Hellcats, and even more so the Z28s, it's the 2016 to 2020 GT350Rs with a time of 3.8 seconds from a 2020 car and driver test. These had their iconic 5.2-liter flat-plane crank V8s making 526 horsepower and 429 pound-feet of torque. I used to think differences between the GT350 and the R were kinda minimal and more so for justifying a higher price tag, but turns out that back in 2016, car and driver tested both and at the time got a 3 3.9-second time with the R, and a sad, pitiful, embarrassing time of 4.3 seconds with a regular GT350. They mainly credit this difference to the carbon fiber wheels, stickier Sport Cup 2 tires, and almost 90-pound weight difference, but with either trim, these are definitely missed. Now, halfway through the list, we've got the Cadillac CT5V Blackwings with a time of 3.7 seconds. These have supercharged LT4 V8s that in these make 668 horsepower and 659 pound-feet of torque, and they have awesome interiors, but sadly, they're going for $90,000 to $115,000 from what I saw. And honestly, that's not the saddest part. The other sad thing about these is that apparently Cadillac's plan is for the CT5 Blackwing to be their big ending to their high-performance gas-powered sedans.
This is the worst.
And actually, speaking of LT4s, next up is the most recent Camaro ZL1s, which hit a 3.5-second 0 to 60 time. Back in the day in the ZL1, the LT4 V8 made 650 horsepower and torque. Beyond loving the engine in these, I've always said, and I'll probably continue to say, these ZL1 1LEs are one of the angriest looking cars from factory that are less than 100 grand. I was also a little surprised about the prices on these being down to around 50 to 70,000 bucks. Granted, lower end is definitely not for 1LEs, but still, these are wild cars for the same price as SUVs you see people unfortunately take loans out for like every other day. The third to fastest car here is another older car compared to the other ones here, and it's the 13 and 14 GT500s, which also hit 60 in 3.5 seconds, famously in first gear. The 2010 to 12 GT500s made only 540 to 550 horsepower, so those were slower, but as a counter to Chevy making 580 horsepower in their ZL1s, Ford got these GT500s to make 662 as a little middle finger to Chevy. And yeah, even though these got the same time as the newer ZL1s, I wanted to keep them as separate entries since we're now in the top 3 quickest cars here, and I just like them enough to separate them. With the GTs, I prefer the 2010 to 12 look over the 13s and 14s, but the GT500 looks absolutely go over the other two. And I like the S550 GT350s and 500s, but whenever I see a convoy of Mustangs or anything, I'm just as excited to see one of these S197s, if not more excited. It's actually getting kind of bad sometimes. At meets, if the owner sees me looking at his car and comes over to say hi, all I can usually get out is,
Lord have mercy, I'm about to bust.
And speaking of cars that are so sexy they can cause temporary loss of brain function, the second to fastest car here is the C6 ZR1 with a time of 3.4 seconds. These make less power than the last 3 cars here with only 604 horses, but weighing less than 3,500 pounds and having one of the best supercharger exhaust mixes out there, these absolutely deserve to be near the top of the list. They're currently going for around 80 to 95,000 bucks from what I've seen, but for anyone who can't afford one or would rather build something up yourself, C6 Z06s with NA 7-liter V8s can hit 60 in just 3.6 seconds and go for around 43 to 60,000 bucks, which is still decently higher than they used to go for, but with the way cars are going, who knows if prices on either of these will go down, especially the ZR1s. And as the American manual V8 car with the fastest 0 to 60 time, it's the 2019 C7 ZR1, which hit 60 in just 3 seconds as tested by Motor1 and Road and Track. I do try to always stick to Car and Driver or Motor Trend to keep comparisons as even as possible, but both of them only ever tested automatics, which hit a 2.9 second time. 3 seconds with a manual is really close to that 2.9 second time, but with a good driver behind the wheel, I figured it was still enough to justify having these at the top. That and the fact that you could host a Thanksgiving dinner for 3 families on the Shaker hood. The pretty huge downside to these though is that they seem to cost between 150 and 200 grand, which is pretty crazy on its own compared to the 103 to 130k range I had in a video from 2020. But also I've now seen 2 listed for 275k and another listed for $315,000. It's just wild knowing people bought these when they first came out, got to enjoy them, and can now double their money by selling it. But for anyone who doesn't have 200k lying around, I figured it's worth mentioning the C7 Z06, Grand Sport, and Z51s because they even have quick times of 3.3, 3.8, and 3.9 seconds. Not that I can afford any of these right now, even though I would consider selling my great-great-grandmother twice removed on my mother's side if she was still alive for a Z06. But for now, this is what I do.
Guiding others to a treasure I cannot possess.
Honorable mentions that were too expensive and outlandish for me to include here are the 04 to 06 Ford GTs and twin-turbo Saleen S7 with times of 3.3 and 3.4 seconds. Let me know if I missed any good ones here, and spanking that like and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed would be real cool. As always, thank you very much for watching. It really does mean a lot. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.